Good morning, Mr. Phelps. This is your mission should you choose to accept it. Should you or any member of your IM force be caught or killed, the Secretary will disavow all knowledge of your actions. Ethan Hunt will be your point man as usual. Good luck, Jim.
Mission Impossible has become my go-to spy movie. Ethan Hunt, in my eyes, has surpassed James Bond in terms of relevance. Ethan is just a much more relatable guy on a human level. Outside of the Daniel Craig movies, Bond has always had this campness to it that's part of the 007 DNA, and it just works for that. But to me, what makes Mission Impossible great is it doesn't have those campy moments. It's more intricate plot-wise, and it feels a lot closer to a representation of what it would actually be like to be a secret agent. There's aspects of Mission Impossible that sound goofy out of context, like the IMF, for instance, which is the Impossible Mission Force, which sounds ridiculous when you say it. There's also elements to it that don't really fit in reality, like the lifelike face masks, which are in the very first scene in the movie. But it handles things like that in such a serious manner that the audience just buys into it. Now these things are staples of the franchise, and we don't even think twice about it when we see it. Mission Impossible is highly underrated as a film, and how it uniquely handles the spy subject matter.
I can understand you're very upset. Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
Mission Impossible was released on May 22nd, 1996. The film is a continuation of both the original TV series of the same name and its revived sequel series. The plot follows Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, and his mission to uncover the mole who has framed him for the murders of his IMF team. The film actually went into production without a shooting script. Director Brian De Palma devised several action sequences, but writers David Cope and Robert Towne were dissatisfied with the story that led to those events. Eventually, De Palma, Cope, and Towne were able to piece together a script that was approved by star and producer Tom Cruise. Cruise actually flexed his Hollywood muscle to get a larger budget from the studio to make action set pieces bigger. Cruise, of course, did most of his own stunts, something he has become known for. Cruise and De Palma reportedly did not get along during the filming of the movie. Mission Impossible was a commercial success, eventually becoming the third highest grossing film of 1996. The film received mostly positive response from critics. Its success spawned the Mission Impossible film series, which as of this video features 6 films. The film uses the original Mission Impossible theme by Lalo Schifrin. Alan Silvestri of Back to the Future score fame was originally hired to write the film's score, but this music was rejected. He was subsequently replaced by Danny Elfman. The film features an all-star cast that includes Tom Cruise, of course, as Ethan Hunt, John Voight as Jim Phelps, Emmanuelle Bert as Claire Phelps, Ving Rhames as Luther Stickle, Vanessa Redgrave as Max, Jean Reno as Franz Krieger, and Henry Czerny as Eugene Kittredge. I always forget how this is a Brian De Palma film because it just doesn't feel like one to me, but I think that just lends itself to how versatile he is as a director. I mean, this is the same guy who directed Scarface, also directed Mission Impossible, and you would never be able to tell if you just sat down and watched the 2 films back to back. I like how they always get their missions in a unique way each time out. Like in this particular movie, they get it from a random stewardess on a plane. And you say a few code words to her, she says a few code words to you. You recognize what you're actually talking about, and then she hands you something, and that's how you receive your mission. I like it because it gives you insight into this world right off the bat, and it gives you an idea of what it's actually like to be a part of the IMF. Like you're instantly sucked in from that moment on, and then there's a briefing right after that, and it basically sets the stage for the whole movie. This is where we're introduced to Ethan's IMF team. I like how the banter between them begins very quickly, and it's spurred on by Ethan, so you immediately get a sense of their team dynamic, and you feel like you know them already. Tom Cruise jumps off the screen immediately, just like he does in every movie he's in. I mean, he steals the show. He's great at playing these somewhat cocky or confident characters and still making them likable, which is not very easy to do. John Voight is the team lead at the start of the movie, and he's great in everything that he does. And even before you know anything about him, you get a sense that his character has a dark side to him, and I think that's a credit to his acting abilities that he was able to relay that to the audience. It's almost foreshadowing of what happens later with his character. I always found it odd that Emilio Estevez was only in the movie for like 10 minutes, as the team's tech guy. As a kid, when he meets his end in the elevator shaft, I always found that to be very disturbing. It cuts away, but it's a lot more gruesome in my head than what it actually is on film. It's just a really effective cut for sure. The whole sequence where the mission goes south is by far my favorite part of the movie.
Abort! Do you read me? Sarah? Good.
I always found it actually kind of creepy how this highly skilled team is slowly being picked off one by one. So there's an unknown presence, there's the foggy streets in Prague. I just really dig the atmosphere of that scene. But it's that initial feeling of the unknown. It creates a lot of suspense and it sets the stakes very high early in the film. Ethan is established very early in the movie as a very skilled agent. He notices the other IMF team. He comes to the realization pretty quickly that he's being framed. So now we're off to the races because now he has to uncover the mystery of what actually happened while also attempting to clear his name. The deck is firmly stacked against Ethan Hunt. So this is when Claire shows up. She survived the double cross. Obviously, Ethan is untrusting of her considering what just happened. I always thought the first person shots were pretty interesting. I like it because it puts you in the role of Ethan, or just in a secret agent in general, and it's a unique perspective on the spy genre because you get to see it from their eyes. So the real mole is believed to be working with an arms dealer known as Max. Ethan warns her that she's been given a fake CIA knock list. This is the list that they were initially trying to intercept in his initial mission. Ethan makes a deal with Max to get her the real list in exchange for $10 million and the identity of the mole, codenamed Job. In order to steal this list, Ethan and Claire recruit two disavowed agents, Luther and Franz, played by Ving Rhames and Jean Reno respectively. In Ving Rhames' initial scene in this movie, he looks like he's still in Marcellus Wallace's wardrobe from Pulp Fiction. They also managed to give you little tidbits in this scene about Luther, about what he's done in his past, and showing his reaction to the mission that Ethan is asking for help with. You just get a good sense of who he is as a character. So small character moments like that make these characters much more relatable. The plan is to break into the CIA headquarters at Langley to steal the actual list. This is where we get the Mission Impossible staple of an Ethan voiceover, basically explaining the more difficult aspects of the mission while showing the location and just setting the stage for what's to come. I always felt like these scenes are what makes the movies live up to their name. Makes it feel like the team truly is up against impossible odds. And as the viewer, you just want to know how they're going to manage to pull it off because they're setting up the conflict so well. To be honest, this next scene is what most people think about, I'm sure, when you hear Mission Impossible. Most people think about Tom Cruise rappelling down into that room, that all-white room, where he can't be seen by anyone, he can't make any noise, the room's temperature can't change, and he can't touch the floor. It's like the ultimate game of the floor is lava. And on top of that, he has to hack a computer to steal the list. All this combines to just make such an exciting and nerve-wracking scene.
Come on, move.
There's just so much he has to take into account so he doesn't get caught. I think another creative choice that was brilliant for this scene was to not include a score. So as the viewer, you're sitting there holding your breath because you don't want to make a sound either. It's just so well staged and executed. My two favorite moments in this scene are one when he catches the bead of sweat that falls off his glasses. The other one is where Franz drops him and he stops like inches from the floor and he's kind of doing one of these numbers, basically to try to keep his balance and make sure he doesn't touch the floor. I mean, he's stuck in midair with no leverage. Then you have the slow motion effect of the knife falling down into the room and sticking into the desk. And that's basically what tips the guy off who works in there that they've been hacked. So once they have the list, this leads to Ethan's second little bit of betrayal. It's just a really well done scene too, because Franz basically thinks he has one up on Ethan because he believes he has the list. Ethan convinces him that he has a fake list and he held on to the real list. This leads to Franz getting frustrated and throwing the list into the trash. Of course, all along, he actually did have the right list, and Ethan was just messing with him and convinced him to give it up. It's just a brilliant play by Ethan, and he's always one step ahead of everyone else, it seems like. The next part is important because then he hands the list to Luther, basically signifying that he trusts him. And again, I think that has a lot to do with Luther actually confiding in them earlier in the movie and explaining situations that he was in prior to them being together. If there's one minor nitpick about the movie, I'd have to say it's the character of Kidrich. To me, the actor plays that role a little bit over the top in a lot of scenes. Honestly, he comes off a little bit goofy at times, but that's minor. He's not really in the movie a whole lot, so this is where John Voight reveals himself to Ethan that he's still alive. He also tries to convince Ethan that Kidrich is the mole. But Ethan, again, one step ahead of everyone else. He's already seen the stamp in the Bible, and he's connected that with something that Phelps told him earlier in the movie. We have Phelps trying to convince Ethan that it was someone else. At the same time, we're getting flashbacks, which is basically Ethan himself putting it together. So again, putting it in his mind. And we'll see him kind of putting it together that Phelps was actually the one who orchestrated the whole thing. We also see that he was aided by Franz, which again lends itself to Ethan not trusting Franz. I also think it's kind of cool and it's unconventional how they have this reveal not at the end of the movie. In most movies, this would be a last-minute twist to add shock value to the end. I just think it's very unique that they chose to do it a little bit sooner. So we come to the finale on the train, and this is where we're going to have the exchange between Ethan and Max, and we're supposed to get the reveal of Job. But we've already had that reveal, technically. Ethan uses Phelps's face to basically trick Claire into confessing that she was in on the whole thing. Phelps then shows up, reveals his whole plan, but doesn't know that Ethan has been recording him the whole time through his fancy spy glasses. This is where Phelps shoots Claire and basically makes his escape. I found it kind of interesting how forgiving Ethan is in this moment because he still shows affection towards Claire even though she basically double-crossed him. Shows what kind of person he is, and he wants vengeance and he goes after Phelps because of what he did. This leads to probably one of the greatest action sequences in any movie ever. It's as good as you're going to see. Ethan gives chase to Phelps on top of a speeding bullet train, and he's barely able to hang on. It's going so fast. Franz follows the train in a helicopter, presumably to pick Phelps up. Ethan, of course, foils this and basically hooks the helicopter to the back of the train so he can't fly away. This is where Franz uses probably the greatest helicopter piloting of all time and pilots his way into a tunnel as the train enters it. This is where Ethan jumps from the train to the helicopter. He uses the explosive gun, slaps it on the screen, and then jumps back to the train as the helicopter explodes, killing Franz and Phelps. The train comes to a stop as the propellers of the helicopter just miss Ethan's throat by inches. It's a heart-pounding action sequence. I remember reenacting this scene as a kid many times. The movie concludes with the list being returned to the IMF and Max being apprehended. Ethan is on the same plane that Phelps was on at the beginning of the movie, receives a new mission from the stewardess, and the life of a secret agent just never stops. I don't know if at the conclusion of this movie if they knew there was going to be 5 sequels or not. But you gotta believe is in the back of someone's mind, most likely Tom Cruise, who I'm sure wanted to turn this into a franchise from the very start. I mean, a world like this has endless possibilities, which the sequels have shown us because they get more crazier and over the top each time out. But they always still manage to keep the spirit of the franchise. This movie is the most grounded in the franchise, and it's arguably the best in the franchise as well. I've admittedly never seen the show that it's based on, but I can assume that it takes some liberties, and there was even reports when the movie was released that cast members from the original show didn't care for how they were portrayed in the updated version of the movie. I think the way they updated the material just worked wonders, and it's had a more lasting impression than the TV show could have ever had. Mission Impossible, in my mind, as I said, has become the gold standard of spy movies. It managed to give us a fresh take on the genre and its tropes, while also adding elements of conspiracy and amazing action sequences. It truly is a unique cinematic experience, and it's highly recommended by me if you haven't seen it before.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.